section 3. We'll just start with some of the equipment ban question moves that we see in the pay tables. You should all have them by now, and I think these are posted on the website when we got the IP. But the 757, first of all, has moved up to the 76300 pay band. Along with it, the A321 Neos and XLRs are also going to now pay the same as 767-300. And these bands almost match identical to Delta's table. The MAX 10 and the MAX 9 and 737-900, those are going to pay a little more than the other 737s. And the big ones, we moved the 737-700 and the 319 up to that middle band. So no more, less pay for those fleet types. We kind of adopted Delta's methodology again. So the A220, should we ever get it, it's in its own pay band now. Again, matches Delta. As far as pay bands, one of the questions that you will get is, well, why is the 380 pay band still in the pay table? The reason for that is if you look in, I think, section 3, where it talks about new aircraft types coming to property where we don't have a pay rate, both parties are we're supposed to sit down with the company and try to negotiate a pay rate. And if we're unable to reach a consensus on what the pay rate should be, there's an arbitration process. And the arbitrator is tasked with picking one of the current pay bands for that new aircraft if we don't reach it. So we will like, obviously it's very high pay rate for the 380. So we wanted in there to at least have the argument say, let's say we get the boom jet actually become a thing, right? We could have we could make the argument, hey, we think it should pay the 380 pay rate. Of course, the company is going to go, well, no, I think it should pay the CRJ 900 rate, right? Or whatever. So what it is it puts a little skin in the game for both parties there is risk involved with letting the arbitrator pick, because you never know what an arbitrator is going to do. So it's always good for us to have that high anchor to put some risk on the company to negotiate in good faith with us for a rate should we need it. Which is also the same reason why the company also wants the CRJ 900 rate on the bottom end. They're like, okay, we want that same protection on the downside should we get smaller aircraft. So those are the reasons why those two pay rates are still in our pay tables. All right, pay rates, obviously, so we're going to have our data signing pay rate, which is going to cause the Delta Me2 language to kick in, which provides them to match our pay rate and then add a % on top of that. So we're going to do the same. We're going to have our pay rate come out, and then Delta's coming, and then we're going to match Delta's rate. So we're going to have to the penny identical pay rates for the next couple of years. And then we have the additional pay rate that Delta does not have for 2027, which is 3%. All right. This is just kind of to ballpark to give you an idea, because there's many things that go into this, obviously, but this is just a representation of how you can see the blend pay rate changing over time. Now, this is based on a static aircraft fleet, which that's one thing we know is not going to happen, but it helps you represent to you what you could see going forward. Again, this should be in the electronic version that you got this morning of the slide deck, so you can study that later. Yeah, the black line does not have the pay tables, but the pay tables, I believe, Marty, you sent them in this deck this morning, this PowerPoint we're going through, is that correct? All right, so the pay tables in this deck are the correct ones. I'm not going to go through these. They're just in here for your information. Oops. Excuse me. All right, snap up. So we negotiated this prior to knowing the outcome of what APA's negotiations were going to entail. But when we did at the time, we did negotiate, should have APA's deal failed and they were negotiated or had an increased data signing pay raise, they would have triggered an additional bump up at Delta. This was language to capture in that event. We would match Delta going up for Americans' pay rates. Obviously, this provision now is not going to come into play since American has ratified, but it'll still be in the book for future, for nostalgia, I guess. All right, line holder MPG. With the bump in vacation, I guess a little story time first, right? All right, so one of the biggest hurdles we had with increasing vacation time from our current value is the whole, whatever term you want to call it, upside down, underwater, fly to guarantee, all the issues with how we were paying vacation with the interaction it had with MPG today. And it was a major hurdle for us because basically every minute of pay we were adding to vacation without changing how we did MPG, all you were doing really was just increasing pay and you weren't really increasing your time off. And the survey data was very clear that pilots prefer paid time off. So part of this transition was we had to figure out a way to get rid of this upside down problem so that when you picked up a trip and a month with vacation, the value of the trip you picked up directly increased your compensation by that exact amount. So in order to do this, we have sacrificed, or not sacrificed, but we've eliminated line holder MPG when we go to this higher credit for vacation. And this is going to happen with the vacation year, not starting in May. So when we go to the credit value of vacation day is going to be for that year, 3 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah. And the pay is going to be $415 for that year. What we did though is in order to compensate for a pilot, with the company were to build your schedule with less than 70 hours. So in very low months, you've seen it before, like you get a PBS line award of 69 hours. We still wanted that protection to guarantee that a line holder, in all cases, if you're available for the entire month, you would still be entitled to 70 hours of pay. So that has created what we're calling the PTC plug. So basically, if your schedule is built to 67 hours out of PBS, the company's just going to grant you 3 hours of additional PTC when they load your schedule, and that's yours in your pocket. It doesn't get prorated. It's nothing. It's there. You could drop all your flying and still end up getting paid 3 hours for the month. So that is the way to protect that, ensure that all line holders still maintain that 70-hour MPG, or the concept what a 70-hour MPG was for. All right. And we can discuss this, probably some questions about it, but. All right, reserve MPG. So with the extra day off that we've added to reserves, we wanted to ensure that a reserve who did nothing, was available for the entire month, still was entitled to the same MPG that they are today of 73 hours. The company wanted to get as close to possible to that 73. That's why you have these seconds of 4:17:39. We actually got 3 extra seconds, but winning. Okay. So this is just some examples of what your MPG will be if you're available all month in these different combinations. All right, unused short calls. All of them, every single unused short call will now be a 1 hour increase of MPG. It won't matter if it's assigned, picked up, or how many you've had. They're all just going to be treated the same. With the reserve call out times that you'll hear about later, we did have to change what the definition of unused short call is. So for a regular, what we're going to call a normal reserve as you live today, you'll see throughout the agreement, we're calling that a traditional reserve. We have all these new reserve flavors, like a pure long call reserve, voluntary early check reserve, a voluntary short call reserve. So with all those flavors, when you hear the words traditional reserve, we're just talking about the run-of-the-mill reserve that you know today. All right. All right, OE blocker days. This is those days that you're blocked for when you need OE after training. We've done a couple modifications here. First is we've increased the value of it to pair with the value of a long training. So it's going to be 3 hours and 7 minutes of PTC per day. And along with that, it's coming up. We've simplified the pay too for the OEBs, and I'll get to that in a slide. All right, reserve call out pay. This was one of our late addition improvements. As you saw probably on the website, it was 5 hours, but we're able to make it 5:15 to marry up with the day of work now being 5:15. So now reserve call out pay is 5:15 of LPV for a day. All right, so this is the simplification I was telling you about, is now you're just going to be paid the greater of your PTC is going to give you 307 for each day of your OEB days, or your LPV of 307 until you start OE, and then the value of the LPV for the OE trip you get. So it's a much simpler computation. It's one of the most complex pay things that anyone does payroll support will tell you. Trying to calculate this will be a lot easier going forward for our pilots to be able to figure out their pay. It's being done properly. All right, critical coverage override. This is almost like a company announced holiday, right? So they say, all right, for Oshkosh, for example, Chicago 737, we're declaring critical coverage, and anyone who has a trip over the weekend that happens to be around Oshkosh, all trips that you fly for that entire trip will be tagged with 25% premium pay, basically. This is a base. So if you were already on a trip that had premium pay on it, let's say 75%, 100% premium pay, this would pay in addition to that. So it's stacked on top of that. And they can do this by category too. So they can pick, like I said, Chicago 737s only. You know, they have that ability to do that. All right. Augmented long duty day. All right, so this is it's not really a rig. This is a pay component. This is why you find it in section 3, not in where min guarantees are. So this is an ad pay piece, and you're going to get paid 1 minute per 1 minute of duty beyond 10 hours. And this applies to unaugmented trips. And yeah, it's the greater of scheduled or actual, whichever one happens to be. So this example here, this slide is this pilot is supposed to get back at 11:14 at night, and it's an 11-hour duty day. So no matter what, this pilot is guaranteed at least 30 minutes of ad pay just for being assigned this trip. If the pilot were to get back early, they're still going to get the 30 minutes of ad pay, but if they run late, then it's going to pay more.
You said 30 minutes.
I'm sorry.
All right.
It pays, it's one, you're right, sorry. Yes, 1 for 1. It's been a long couple of weeks, so bear with me. All right.
It says right here.
Yes, more than 10 hours, so. Yes. If I'm going too fast, or just someone, please, or you're saying mushed words, please let me know. Yes, sir. Can we, is it about this, or we're almost, can you hold the questions? Thank you. All right, long sit pay. So this is for any trip, basic, global, augmented, unaugmented, but long sits that are scheduled. So if you have, this is again, a lot of these rules that are here are to help drive pairing quality in the pairing build. I mean, the operation, when it falls apart, it falls apart. It's a United trademark, basically. But what we want to do is at least have the best shot of having the best quality of life by driving the pairing construction to do the heavy lifting for us. So all these rules, when you put them together as a package, they all kind of complement each other. One of the fears is, if we had one rule in place, like let's say, we're increasing the minimum day to 5:15 per day. If we were to do that in isolation, computer's smart and it's trying to drive out credit. So it could have done a bunch of ugly, awful things. And our peers who've had 515 for a couple of years before we did, learned all these growing pains and showed us the way. And how that's why they, you saw Delta added these similar rigs and pay components to their trip construction to solve for the things that the solver was doing to try to not have to pay out that 515. So it was great that we were able to add all these all at once in this TA. So, but they all do kind of complement each other. All right, so this one, again, this is a scheduled sit, so it's not an actual sit like if something breaks down and you get a long sit that's created. And again, this one is 1 minute pay for every 2 minutes of sit time beyond 2 hours. Okay. All right, new concept for us, holiday pay. These are not the UPA defined holidays. These are unique holidays just for this provision. So some are not included and then some are new that aren't defined in the holiday definition. As you see, so basically the big holidays, it's any trip that touches any portion of that day, you get it. Then we have these 2 eves, the Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So basically that's if you're going to miss the eve portion of that day, that's why those are carved out the way they are. This was kind of a compromise because we have 1 extra holiday than Delta does. But so instead of having just 1 less holiday, we got 2 eves. It was kind of the history on that. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, good question. So yeah, this is on actual basis. So this will include a reserve who's assigned a trip that flies into a holiday is going to get it. If you're delayed into a holiday, you're going to get it. Now, the flip side, to be honest, too, is if for some reason you get back early and you're not actually working on the holiday, you will not get paid the holiday pay.
Do that again, sorry.
If you get back, you were scheduled to work into the holiday, but you get your trip gets cut short or you fly fast and you get back early, then you will not get paid. So it's purely on an actual basis.
Pause your break. You're up.
Yeah. Yeah, and the example is clear below, but example, let's say your trip touches you report on Christmas Eve and you fly through Christmas, you get paid both holidays on that trip. So that's highlighted in the example below. Same for New Year's. Okay, short training pay. So this is your CQ basically most of the time. It's increasing to 415. This will be for, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but for November and December CQs, they'll be paid at 415, and then starting in January, 5 hours per day. Long training pay. Before 3 hours and 7 minutes. All right, CBT or home study, CQDL. That's now, again, so for an hour and a half of training, you'll get paid 1 hour. All right, vacation. All right, so again, we kind of talked about this earlier. There's so many factors that go into how much time off you're going to get in a bid period. Do you have other absences? What's your trip schedule? Can you get carry out flying? But again, these are rules of thumb. Okay, so there are obviously exceptions and corner cases and everything. But in general, like I said, for this upcoming vacation year, with even going just to 345 hours per day of credit, you should be able to get an extra day off in a vacation month with 1 week of vacation, 2 extra days off, for 14 days of vacation, and so on. And then the following year, when we go up to the full 415 per day of credit, it'll bump up to about 2 extra days off per month for the 7-day vacation and 3 for 14. The other part too is, in most cases, I don't want to say it all cases, but with 3 weeks of vacation, you would need a little carry in or very little carry out, or in most cases, your seniority probably will get you, if you're a line holder, where you're probably going to be, you could probably avoid working in a month if the LPA isn't not being pushed way to the extreme, that you'll be done and not have to get any flying awarded to you in a month that you had three weeks of vacation. So that's a nice penny. Let's see, anything else we want to talk about here?
Credit and pay on this slide.
Sure. So yeah. So the question is describe the difference between the credit and pay. So credit, remember, is what is your schedule is going to be built around in PBS. Pay is what actually goes in your pocket at the end of the month. So for this current year that we're in right now, this vacation year, everybody's going to get, there's already had vacation that's taken between May and October. You're going to get an additional 30 minutes of compensation that's going to come to you. We haven't quite figured out when the pay date for that's going to be, but considered a little extra additional retro piece. And next year, the next vacation year is, so we're going to build your schedule in PBS. Each day of vacation is going to have a value of 3 hours and 45 minutes. So that's what's going to build your schedule around to get you to your LPA, to your scheduling cap and floor. But when it's loaded into your master schedule, the day of vacation is going to have a pay component of $415 per day. So you're going to have this extra pay on top of what your PBS award is going to come out at. So let's say you had a 80-hour PBS award, but your pay register is going to be above that by 30 minutes per day of vacation. So does that help with the question?
Why is that?
Because the credit is what drives staffing, right? So I can only assign you so much flying in PBS, which means I need to have so many line holders. And if I have so many line holders, I have to have so many reserves. So we're in this, pretty healthy growth phase right now. This vacation piece alone, when we get to the end state of 415 per credit per day, is going to drive a need of at least 600 extra pilots just to cover the vacation. So we have, in addition of all the growth we're doing, the company also has to hire, in addition to that, to allow for all these extra manpower needs that the contract's requiring. All in, we believe towards, based on what the company's projected growth over the duration of this deal, the going figure is roughly that the UPA 23 itself would need an additional roughly about 1,000 heads for all the extra credit that's being produced.
So just to clarify that, the UPA 2023, all the improvements we're seeing is going to drive about 1,000.
Yeah, and there's some overlapping because of when we add vacation to this, like, okay, I got to add vacation to you, but also the person I'm hiring is also going to have more vacation than they would have had before. So there's some compounding from growth here. So again, these are ballpark. Obviously, these are valuations versus, at the end of the day, some 4 years ago, well, you only hired 636 pilots, right? But this is just to give you a magnet. These are more for magnitude size of letting you know how big some of these changes are. So, because one of the questions you always will get is, well, is this manpower positive? Is this manpower negative? This vacation piece is hugely manpower positive, all right? Same with the trip rigs. Anything that adds, you see the word credit, drives manpower need. So vacation, training, trip construction, those are the big buckets. They're producing this huge need for extra pilots. All right, profit sharing. So today, I don't know if you're aware, but our a pilot gets hired January 1st, works the entire year for United, isn't eligible for profit sharing payout that following year. The way the company profit sharing plan is you have to be a full complete year of service before you can get the profit sharing payout. This applies to all employee groups at United. It's not just a pilot thing. But what we were able to secure is, should the company change their company policy or the company plan, profit sharing plan to include any employee group for new hires, that they have to include our pilots too. Yeah, please. Thank you. All right. All right. So our profit sharing formula now is in sync with our competitor from Atlanta, and also with the one in Dallas, it turns out. So basically what this means is, instead of hitting that trigger to get the profit sharing pool up to 20% from being a margin, now it's a fixed dollar amount. So this is very important for us now, as if we continue this massive growth where our revenue keeps growing highly every year, that switching to a fixed dollar amount really benefits us versus maintaining the margin going out. So what this slide represents, back in 2019, our last meaningful profit sharing payout. This is just an example of what the difference would have been. So if we would have had this formula back in 2019, it would turn out to be about, what is that? It's about 0.5% more in the actual payment. The big piece out of this, though, is, in addition to the formula changing, which will benefit us more going forward, more impactful, you'll see, is actually the addition of it being eligible for retirement contributions. So as you can see, the majority of the chunk of the value of this is coming from being able to now get the percentage of the B and C contributions on it. All right, from something meaningful to a huge lift, we got 50 cents more in international overhead. Don't spend it all in one place. All right, global override. Okay, so a little story time. So in the TA1, we did not have our 321 XLR paying the same as Delta 757 pay rate. So at the time, the issue was the company didn't want, they were willing to pay Delta 757 pay rates when you're flying transatlantic routes, but they wanted the pay rate to be similar to Spirit when they're flying domestic. So the company created this issue where, okay, we'll pay you this rate, and then we'll give you this override when you're flying global flights on narrow bodies. And that's what was in TA1. Subsequent to that, then Delta's negotiations saw, ooh, that global override, that could be a problem for us. So we needed insurance should United pay this global override, that if we ever put a narrow body into the global flight schedule, that we wanted to pay this override. So they made insurance against our old TA that failed, which now meant we had to make insurance on their insurance. So this is what this is. Delta today, they don't have any XLR, 321 XLRs or LRs for that matter on order. But they do have Airbuses on order, so it's possible they could change the order and get them, probably likely. And as far as the MAXs, they only have the MAX 10 on order, which airplane people tell me if I'm not wrong, that I believe its range is not much different than the 900 we have today. But they part of their deal was this insurance, should they add those aircraft into the global flying regime over at Delta, that they'd get this additional override. So this is our protection in the case that they actually do at Delta, to make sure that, because our pay rates are supposed to be paired up with theirs. So this is just insurance for us in that scenario. It's way tricked up, but the reason why they have this first part is there was fear that Delta would add it to just 2 or 3 flights. And we are going to have up to, I think we have is it 50 or 70, the XLRs on our exposure, they know it's going to be a lot higher. So our company is concerned that Delta management would try to trick our management into having to pay this. So there's this whole ratio. Basically, if Delta's just flying a couple flights and we have a huge operation in the Atlantic, that we're going to get however much money Delta's paying out to their pilots, we divvy it up to our pilots flying global flights on these same aircraft. And the way it works is people will be eligible for this that are flying global flights on 767 300s, 75s, the Airbuses or Maxes in a global flight, should it happen. And I'm sure in Q&A I can give you a little more information, but you'll see the language. It's a lot of words, but basically it's insurance on top of insurance. Okay, we did a little reorganization. We moved the LCP pay component stuff out of section 23 and put it into section 3. We also took the LCP scheduling items and moved them out of 23 and put them into section 20. All right, so the override, it's tied to 25% of the 12th year pay rate of the highest paying aircraft in operation, which is today the 777-78. And this is the rates going forward. We now have that in the future, should we get an additional pay raise, these rates will automatically go up. So we don't have to renegotiate next time what the LCP rate, it's always going to be tied to the 12th year highest paying aircraft type. A big difference here is the pay rate now is going to be attached to the trip once the company decides to lock the trip for training. Should the company never put a student on this trip, the LCP is going to get the compensation for the fact of having their trip locked, basically. So this is come and gone. There's been some issues. Company got way overzealous and started locking schedules up in the past. We also now have that they have to distribute, and this will come up later, not stealing their thunder, but there needs to be more equitable and more fair treatment of the LCPs. No more slamming one while the other one is not flying, or so basically, and making sure that they're only locking or preventing trip trading from trips that LCPs get awarded based on the actual need of OE. So if they're only projecting that every LCP in that category is only going to be doing one trip of OE in the month, they're only going to be locking or freezing one trip, out of PBS. And the guys will explain this more. But the key here is, again, is you get the money guaranteed if the company is to freeze your trip with or without students. Okay. Line check PPU. This basically is if in your category they are offering PPU for regular line pilots on regular trips, the company has the ability to offer that same value of PPU to an LCP to cover a need that pops up for a student needing OE or line check or whatever it is. So that's what that provision is. Oh, and this one is also kind of to make sure to prevent the favoritism is, again, they have to kind of equitably spread it amongst the LCPs. So not just the favorite LCP gets all the PPU just because they know the scheduler. So we kind of handle this kind of like we do at the training center where, okay, you've got one. Okay, I'm not going to come back to you until all the other guys that got the same qualifications that can do it have had a little bit of PPU themselves.